Code keepers. Oops, I meant classmates. It's time for another great episode. Oops, I meant class. Let's go.
Black diamond, 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 black diamond.
Grandpa Crump.
All right, Doc. I understand in today's class you're going to be teaching us not to be so naive and not to fall for the banana in the tailpipe, if you will. All right, classmates, I hope you have your notebooks ready. Time to take some copious notes and learn. Doc, it's in your capable hands.
Hey, so first, I'm not teaching our people that because I consider our people to be very intellectual. That's our origins. Our origins are intellect, not oppression. So that's one component, one central component, and one requirement for us to understand the pros and cons, as I also addressed regarding affirmative action 2 weeks ago, is for us to not identify as oppressed, instead be identified as intellectual. Intellectualism requires understanding critiques, pros and cons, various sides, because people, including our own people, oftentimes want our people, Black people, to choose one side for everything, to choose the side we're told to choose, because people love to boss us around. We're told to be loyal to one component, to never critique it, to never research different sides of that component, to never understand the full span of it, and to never require real evidence beyond promises. And that's a huge deal that I want our people to understand, that the work that our ancestors, our elders have done, that we keep doing ashe, and celebrating, was not done so that we can keep doing the same thing they were doing over and over again in terms of marches and protests. Many things our elders and ancestors have done over thousands of years of the original Africans. I'm talking about after the continents existed. Those are the original Africans I talk about. And then centuries regarding racially Black people, formerly called Negro and colored. We have to understand what our ancestors and elders have done, because if we're truly living in their path and also critiquing them, because they also want us to critique them. Like, I'm a UNIA member. Marcus Garvey critiqued himself. If you read Amy Jackie Garvey's writings, you'll understand that as well. So everyone who does this work has to know inner critiques, has to know what can change the next time this is done. And that's the foundation for our people. We don't have to be loyal to anyone without understanding the pros and cons.
All right. So in processing what you just shared, Doc, we don't have to stray away from critiquing the work of our predecessors. That seems so counterculture, because we were taught not to critique, not to question authority. We were taught not to, respect the elders. We were
Who was taught? Well, here's one of the things. We can love our elders, but I don't believe in deferring to people just because. That is the detriment of our people, that you defer to someone just because they said it. There are a lot of false things conveyed, including false things that have religion on the title, that have a doctoral degree on the title. It's not true just because someone said it. This is where our people have to understand how to do critiques, not critiquing just because you want to disagree with somebody. not critiquing because you dislike somebody, but actually critiquing because you want to do something that is productive to advance our people. So you're not being petty and vindictive like we're in high school. You're actually doing something progressive. And this is also explained by trailblazers such as Harold Cruz. Of course, I specialize in Harold Cruz's work addressing Black culture, understanding the components of our culture. Harold Cruz was very outspoken in terms of he critiqued a lot of our trailblazers. He called them out by name, whereas Thomas Sowell was different. Thomas Sowell critiqued trailblazers, but he did not say their names. He made general statements. Whereas Harold Cruz was like, yeah, so-and-so, 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 so-and-so. Because Harold Cruz was just troublemaker like that. But the point he was trying to convey was that what are we developing beyond talking? What are we actually developing? And we can't always join other people's clubs, right? We can't always use everyone else's theories and concepts. As Africans, we have thousands of years of theories, sciences, medicines. We have centuries of Black people in the Western Hemisphere of our own concepts and theories. We can integrate different components, but you cannot always jump to the other side if you don't know what our own people have established. Because if you do that, then your critique of outsiders will never matter, because they will think you don't know anything about your own culture. So how can you critique what they are telling you, such as politicians, decision makers in schools, health professionals, any capacity where people have power, and that includes Black people who are in those positions of power, which includes Black politicians. As Harold Cruz explains, Black politicians, Black civil rights leaders play a role, but they are not the center of our culture. The center of our culture are Black artists who are also Black intellectuals and Black scholars. Black artists who are Black intellectuals and Black scholars are the center of our culture. Therefore, they're the center of developing our inner world as Black people, developing our progress as a people, evolving, which is beyond a revolution. We have to have an evolution, and that's against the remainder of human existence. So this is where we have to understand that you don't just join on to something just because it seems like it's really trendy, it's gonna work for us. Because if people realize, which they do realize for centuries, they consider Black people to be very predictive, right by now. So people know what to excite us. Political leaders, including Black politicians, know you turn Congressional Black Conference, Congressional Black Caucus conferences into like HBCU homecomings, put some music, some good food, and Black folks will come and party without real policy discussions and legislation discussions. You get more Black legislators, and Black people be like, yes, we're represented, without reading the legislation. I'm a criminologist as well with a background in criminal justice. Most people do not read the law. And so therefore, people will say they support something going in the books, but they themselves are not actually reading what is in the books. And of course, if you are pulled over by police or arrested by police, you can't say, I don't know that's a law, because police will tell you it's your job to know the laws. So this is where we as a people have to understand what we can do instead of waiting for everyone else. And therefore, when we're critiquing everyone else, it doesn't mean that we're always expecting other people to fulfill our needs. As Harold Cruz also explains, they will fit a certain role. But again, we determine that role that they should fit. We determine how we will measure that role consistently. This is why I talk about financial audits, evaluations of programs, including curriculum development for academic programs, K through 12 in colleges and universities. When people talk about the banned book month, I tell people, why do you care about that? As I always say, because unless families are involved, Black families specifically, unless Black families are involved in PTA meetings, school board meetings, and curriculum development programs, then banned books means absolutely nothing. So these are just some examples of ways that we do not have to trust decision makers, but we cannot abandon it either, because we have to be part of this process. We just have to understand how to do multiple components of that process.
That's interesting, because in 2018, I ran for the school board in my area, and that was a complete learning experience. I learned that we don't know that we have power. And so very often I saw that we looked at politicians, elected officials, as either being celebrities or saviors. Like, they're going to come in here and do something for us. What did you do for them? You know, did you pay for a great amount of their campaign? You know, did you negotiate with them? No. But so they were looking at as elected officials as being saviors or celebrities. So the mayor would walk in the room, oh, it's the mayor, yay! And I was like, he just voted 4 or 5 times against your agenda. School board members would walk in and like, oh, school board, yay! Well, so what did they vote on? And they don't know.
Well,
we didn't know.
Well, even if these people did vote on it, I always tell people I'm not a photo op person. So
right.
When that person's coming in the room, I'm not cheering them on, because why should I cheer them on, regardless of who the person is? Because it doesn't matter what they voted in. It doesn't matter what legislation they've passed, because that's also a disguise. When you go to the White House website, when you go to mayor's websites, when you go anywhere and it says this policy has been put in place, this legislation has been passed, I want our people to understand, don't start just celebrating. Now the question is it being put into action?
Yeah,
that's the difference between, putting it on paper versus action, 2 different things. And if it's being put in action, are there direct and or indirect impacts that can help our people? And this is explained by Dr. William Julius Wilson, Thomas Sowell, many of our people over the centuries. We can look for direct effects if we're looking at the racial impact, but if we do not want to address race because we want to look at a larger impact, because Africans are trailblazers for thousands of years of human rights work. So if we want to protect humans in general, we still want there to be a trickle-down effect to protect our people as humans. Right? In other words, you can't do human rights on the back of Black folks. It has to be human rights that includes Black people, like gender justice, sexuality, poor working class, middle class. It can't just be everyone else somehow benefited, but Black people are still struggling. So this is where I tell people, I never understood why people celebrate videos and photos of politicians sitting at a desk signing legislation.
Because they don't know.
Well, I think people do know. I always tell, as I've told people every time I'm interviewed, I don't believe in a such thing as ignorance like that. I do believe that a lot of people do know. I just think sincerely that the same way most people do not read, most people just are not invested in that process. And a lot of people are afraid to offend somebody. So if you're looking at areas where people know each other, they want to be in the know of people with whom they share certain similarities, or they come from the same background, they know each other's family, they went to the same school, they go to the same synagogue, mosque, church, whatever. So I think people sometimes do know. It's just that they've just been told to just keep going with the flow, because that's when we talk about social capital, human capital, cultural capital. Unfortunately, a lot of people consider this a form of just living life, worrying about more important things, and also a form of networking. So they don't care that they're networking such that it can harm people's outcomes. They do this every election cycle. They don't follow through in the process. And then the next election, they act like they're shocked that legislation either did not really go into action like they thought. They're like, we thought. And I was like, y'all didn't think. I mean, you thought in terms of,
They be
you
capping.
know,
They
yeah,
be
in terms
capping.
of convincing us something. But this is just a process that humans have always done. So this is why when we're talking about for our people, we have to wonder when, I mean, some of us already challenged that process. That's been the case for centuries. So there are people who already challenged that process. We're oftentimes considered the troublemakers. So when I'm on a panel or at an event and there are politicians there, including Black politicians, and people celebrate them, I just tell them, I don't trust any politician. I don't trust any political party. Me as an informed voter and an informed taxpayer does not mean that we're all now going to share lunch. Okay, that's not how this is going to go. And I always explain, it can't be that you're a politician, including a Black politician, and now you want me to treat you like you the GOAT Rakim, and we about to spit some lyrics together. No, you are a politician. You're paid through my taxes. I'm not going to take photos with you for you to use on your website to pretend Dr. Kimya automatically likes you. Instead, we can have a full conversation. No, do not give me your business card and tell me, contact me if you have questions. If I have questions, I want answers that are going to be presented to everybody, not an answer to me behind the scenes. And that's something else that I want our people to understand. That's another routine that happens. People think that you're going to support them if they have a conversation with you off the record or behind the scenes. They exchange business numbers with you. They think if they're so cordial with you, so nice with you, and this is every political party does this, that somehow there will come an agreement. And I tell people this is not about an agreement. This is about evidence. Evidence is not about an agreement. That's also, when you look at it from a research standpoint, that's the whole component of positivism. Positivism does not mean we're positive in terms of like, hey, y'all. Positivism is testing concepts, theories in research. So that's what we talk about positivism in sociology, criminology. We're actually conducting these studies. So it doesn't matter who created the concepts and theories. We're testing your concept and theory. You could be my cousin and I'm testing it and I'm critiquing it. You still my cousin. Okay, I'm still gonna see the family reunion, but I can say that your theory is whack. We don't throw away the theory though, but we just keep saying we have to change things about this theory. And so I use as an example because that's the same case when we're looking at people who do policies, legislation, politicians. They will make you think, and their supporters will make you think that critiquing them, demanding financial audits, doing research follow-up means that you're now erasing all of these groundbreaking people who've done real hard work. We're not erasing them. They still are here. It's just like positivism. Those theories are still here. We're saying we see you, but we're not stupid. Okay? So you're here for a reason. You're not here to just be hanging out with people. You're not here to give me your card so that we can talk over lunch sometime off the record. For politicians, everything's on the record, okay? And that's for decision makers in other capacities as well, whether it's medical and health resources, schools, workforce development programs. Everyone who has that power, including our own people, has to know that we're not stupid people. We're not an ignorant people, okay? We come from a foundation of intellectualism, and therefore we have to develop that. And that's also, again, what Harold Cruz wanted our people to understand.
So what are some of the strategies that Harold Cruz and yourself think that we should use when dealing with decision makers?
Yeah, so one process that I always start with is I would say years ago, probably 10 or so years ago, I would consider helping somebody's campaign because I was like, okay, we're trying to just help people because they want to make some changes. But then when you start to understand politics is about everything, like everything's political. And that doesn't mean political party. It means that everything has socio-political implications as a reciprocal relationship because everything impacts sociopolitics and everything is influenced by sociopolitics. So therefore, I tell people, even if your significant other goes into politics, you're going to have to learn how to distinguish being close with somebody from their new power that they might get, their voice, whether they're able to explain themselves. That's a huge deal. And I've had that where people who are running for elections or people who are current politicians, they don't do well explaining things because, first of all, they're not the ones who are researching these issues in the first place. They have a team doing this for them. So you can tell, like, for me, I would consider it kind of like AI, which I don't allow AI used for my courses, or even plagiarism. Like someone else is writing your ideas, which on some end you can understand that. However, then you have to question the sincerity. Like, how much do you really know about what you're conveying? There are some politicians, of course, who are quite intellectual and were very involved in work before they became politicians. But we just have to be honest that once people become politicians, there is a trade-off. So in other words, they might say they want this to be accomplished to help people, but it's a trade-off because it's something that they're giving in to say, okay, if we can accomplish this, I can sacrifice that. And this is one thing I always explain to people. They're never going to fulfill everything that they promise. They're never going to fulfill everything that they even personally want, because that is what they call the bargain. They're doing a bargain. And sometimes if you find out what they sacrificed, you'd be even more mad at them and be mad that you voted for them. So this is where I just tell people, this is a component of what Harold Cruz would suggest. So when I do the Harold Cruz presentation, everywhere you're located, do an outline. Who are the Black artists, intellectual scholars, and they can all be synonymous in the same category. Who are they? Who are they where you're located? Like, who does hair? Who does visual art? Who does music? Who are the teachers? Who are the people who send messages? Who are the community advocates? And we're talking about people preferably who are not receiving sponsorships from the decision makers who they claim to critique and challenge, right? That's a huge deal. And as I've explained to you before, I also want our people to get rid of this whole defund everything, dismantle everything, because there are some resources that we need in place, because you can theoretically say, get rid of police, get rid of the prison system. But I'm saying this as a criminologist. If you get rid of all of that, which will never happen realistically, but let's have the idea that you did, like I do with my students. Let's say you got rid of it. I always tell people you will always find an exception. Something will happen to something you know or someone you know, and you're like, this person needs to be penalized this way. Therefore, you would mysteriously want to reappear what you had previously said needed to be defunded or dismantled. This is why I also tell people during election time to be careful about the particular political parties that act like they're getting rid of everything, like they're getting rid of all these laws. And I tell people, read what law they're talking about getting rid of, talk about what they're legalizing. If they're going to legalize something, are they going to get funds into clinics that people need, even when they're still dealing with addiction to what is now legal? These are all different issues. So that's a huge component. Harold Cruz outlined this. Of course, he used terminology that's considered outdated, but outlined what are the resources you have where you're located. How are we going to deal with cleaning up the area? It doesn't mean throwing people in incarceration, but it means, and by the way, when I say that, I explain, when we talk about the crack cocaine epidemic, government did not just randomly do that. Police did not just show up. Black legislators, Black politicians, and Black people in communities demanded the police to arrest people and tear down the crack houses. They didn't say, hey, we need rehabilitation centers. They said, get these people out of here. Okay.
Hmm.
And the outcome is what it is. So this is why I want our people to have a factual history, because unfortunately we have generations that were born after the internet existed, after social media existed. So they will believe all types of nonsense because people are not reading books, they're not reading articles. So they will think that the crack cocaine epidemic happened because randomly the government said and the police showed up. No, they need to learn what legislators did. They also need to know how the Congressional Black Caucus initially, over generations ago, profited from tobacco industry that is marketed in particularly Black parts of cities with the flavored tobacco, right?
Right.
So these are all things that I recommend people outline in a similar design. When I did the Harold Cruz presentation, map out what does your family have? What resources does your family have? What resources are in the community? Are you part of organizations, collectives? What resources are there? It can't be resources that politicians are giving you. What resources do you already have? And there's some other components of that. I want to see if anyone's listening and has any thoughts or questions.
No, we don't have any viewer comments or anything of that nature.
Okay.
But I do think that what you're sharing is pivotal because, once again, the same way that I mentioned that we look at politicians as being saviors of celebrities, we look at, I guess, a lot of people who are decision makers in that capacity. And, you talked about not necessarily aligning ourselves and defining ourselves as this or that, as red or blue, as faith-based or non-faith-based. I'm starting to see the wisdom in that. I'm definitely starting to see the wisdom in that because I think too often we fall for the banana in the tailpipe.
You love that phrase.
Yeah, when we buy into that binary system, like you got to be this or that.
Mm-hmm. You can get with this, so you can get with that. You can get with this, so you can get with that. Yeah. I mean, and that's an intentional design. So one of the things that I explained in terms of the United States of America government, and we can talk about this economic system, and of course the integration of capitalism with the European form of socialism for more than a century, is that there's supposed to be this wider span of forms of freedom. It's not going to be complete freedom. There's going to be some government intervention, but I always tell people, if this bothers you, United States of America, think about it from a global standpoint. When you go all around the world, there's different forms of governments, different forms of economic system, there's different forms of government intervention. And government intervention will include, of course, social welfare, since I help people get SNAP EBT. It includes veterans benefits and other resources. So this is another example where I'm talking about how to critique. I don't believe in choosing just one side in that sense, because I think that the key is to require collaborations. And there's no reason for these people to collaborate if they think that you're just going to only know one side because you're not researching. You just see something that you're told to choose, and there you go. It's important to understand that form of collaboration is looking at different sides and trying to look at the full span of the different sides. And that's going to bother a lot of people because most people have been told to like a particular thing, choose that particular thing.
Choose a team.
It could be vote red or you're dead, vote blue, no matter who, all that stuff. And I tell people, I won't try to stop that. That's up to them. But I do want people to understand that politicians, decision makers, in any capacity in our lives, have no reason to change. They have no reason to care about your evaluations and your opinion if you're going to continue that routine regardless. And if you're not going to have this dueling roles that you select, so that there can be groups that have to combine their efforts. Like whenever you hear politicians say we're going against the owl and we're going to shake hands and collaborate, well, that has to happen during elections as well. Like if you all claim to go against the owl and shake hands, which also happens because they hang out and go to lunch together, golf courses. So these politicians hate each other on CNN, Fox News, MSNBC. These people
Right.
hanging out anyway, right? So if they can do that after elections on the ballot, people consider what are some ways that after you read about everyone running for office, including mayors, including judges, how can we choose varying sides to make sure these varying sides know we've researched all of you and we want you all to grow up, learn how to collaborate instead of pretending that just one side has the answer, because that's never been the case once you actually learn the facts. And people can talk about that when we're talking about funding, the funds that are available in the United States of America, the way the government in US funds around the world. Every political party and every politician has been critiqued regarding issues such as funding. So therefore, be an active voter, be an informed voter, which means require these politicians to not be too comfortable, to think that you're just going to be loyal and just straight up choose. Instead, just learn more and let them know that you're reading more, that you know how to participate in organizations that are actually doing this research, and organizations that are not necessarily funded by the collectives that do not want us to critique. Because again, if organizations are funded through politicians or any groups that are connected to the politicians, there's not going to be any real productive critique and any productive work done.
All right. So, any last words before we close class, Doc?
Yeah, so I want our people to just continue this process. This is a never ending process for the remainder of human existence. It's not just you say it one time and you drop the mic. It's not like that at all. And it's not just one election. They will tell you that every single election is the most important election. They'll keep telling you that. So I encourage our people to read more. I always say this, read more, be involved in some way in the community. Everyone's busy, so find something that you can contribute. And I do encourage our people to be informed voters. If you choose not to vote in the national election, vote in the local election. If you choose not to vote in neither, then therefore find another way to be involved in helping people beyond yourself as well. So be involved. I'm not one of those people who says, if you don't vote, I don't want to hear your opinion. I still want to hear opinions. I still want our people to know your opinion still matters. You're still a taxpayer. Your taxes still shape and pay all these people, okay? So you're still an influencer in that regard, but you have to find a way to make it productive, because that is going to definitely mean that your opinion matters in a wider span.
All right, code keepers and classmates. As you know, Doc always leaves her notes and links to information in a lot of the shows that we do. Doc, do you have some notes you're gonna leave in this particular show?
I was not going to leave the notes. I actually would like for our people to read the notes that I left for the affirmative action show.
Okay.
So if they can find the affirmative action one, because that will give some examples for what I just explained. Because when you see all the news stories and you hear politicians and even schools responses to affirmative action, this is a way to look at the pros and cons. And it doesn't mean you don't support something. It means that your support comes with stipulations. It comes with requirements. It comes with evidence. So you can never say you support it because you saw the title. It has to be, okay, I see the words. Now let me read what are the implications? Who are they claiming to reach? What are the stipulations? What's going to come from this? How are they going to determine this is going to happen? And again, this is a constant process for the remainder of human existence, because decision makers in schools, medical and health facilities, workforce development, governments, and this is around the world, have already figured out that most people will not require details and will not read the details or even listen to the details in a presentation. So this is just where I encourage our people to just put in that work bit by bit. The old phrase, inch by inch, it is a cinch. It's not really a cinch, it's not easy, but the whole idea is you do it bit by bit. It's frustrating, but you just keep doing that work. And we teach the work to future generations of our people. Because I really, as I was interviewed last year by an African diaspora mental health group, I do not want our people to be reliant on internet and social media. Although we're streaming live on internet right now, I want us to use that in moderation and balance, and to learn how to exist if and when the internet and social media disappear. What are the knowledge and actions that we can access? And we can think of many examples, such as the Harold Cruz's work, Marcus Garvey, Du Bois, Magdalena Walker, Anna Julia Cooper. I mean, there's non-famous examples, but there's so many examples that we have as a people of doing the work and not just typing about it, and not just looking at influencers on the internet who are dancing and making a ton of money, but then the actions are not there. So I'll stop there.